Hello and welcome to CabChat. This is episode 287 of the longest running taxi podcast in the world. I'm Jamie the cabbie, and beside me is
Tom the taxi driver. Yes, we're all back, ladies and gents.
So I've had a complaint from a fellow creator, someone who was my partner in the creation world, and he said that my voice sounded over-processed compared to Tom's. So I've literally turned off all the processing on the microphone, and my voice sounds more processed now than when it was switched on. So we've come to the conclusion that when I sit in front of a microphone, my voice just goes into auto processing mode, and this is what you get.
Well, funny enough, now we've started, it sounds like it's not. It's not so processed. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know, but it's one of those like blind taste tests.
Let's give it a try, shall we? So
yeah, we'll let the viewers decide, the listeners decide, and then we'll get on today's topic, which is about the knowledge.
Turning it back on.
So number one.
So this is how my voice did sound.
So that sounds processed to me.
Yeah, that is processed, yes. And if I turn that off now, this is how my voice sounds now.
That's not gone back to how it was.
No, it's not, has it?
I think you've got too many settings and processes going on there, mate.
Right, let's turn all processing off. And my voice, that is my voice naturally now.
Okay, just give us a sentence of what you had for breakfast.
What did I have for... I haven't had breakfast yet. No, I haven't had breakfast yet. So...
I quite like that one. Let's go with that, with the processing off.
We're going to go with that, yeah.
So,
my auto-processing voice.
So, John Cox. Right. Just before we get into the topic of the knowledge, I'm thinking, well, look, this is a podcast about the taxi trade. We talked about the maxi cab the other week and how the vehicle is really important. And I've since gone down a rabbit hole and been learning loads about the turning circle, which I'll share on a future episode. Related to that, I've been having emails with the legend that is Stanley Roth, who's kind of been very kindly watching some of my old videos and saying, that fact's wrong, which I really appreciate because obviously he's a blue badge guide and got his badge in 1957. Yeah, it's kind of important that the trade history is correct and it forever remains correct. So, but we've done a little test this morning where we've had him on, our podcast recording. He's 90 years old and he was already in this podcast Riverside app that we're using before me. I sent him the link and he's just tuned straight in and he's like, yep, I'm ready. How are we doing this? So we will be seeing him in a future episode and we're going to get lots of insight from that man.
We're going to send him some headphones because we had a problem with echo because he had his volume turned up loud because I think he can't hear as well as he used to be able to hear. So he's got his volume turned up really loud and we got an echo problem. So we're going to send him a pair of headphones so that he can join us because he seems quite keen to join in, doesn't he?
Well, most certainly. I mean, he spent, if he was a blue badge guide, the amount of work that just goes into that. But, he just showed us a sort of a brief look at some of his collection of taxi-related stuff, which is condensed down from the years that he's had it. He's had to sort of actively kind of sell bits off because he's got sort of one of the largest taxi archives that a lot of the big books out there reference to. I'm just speaking to him previously that, a lot of the Bill Munro books, they use all of his for all of his data and archives and research. Abstracts of Cab Law by Sean Farrell, I think it was, is all through him. So we definitely want to get him on and just get some real wisdom, how stuff used to be, why stuff came into place, because it's gold right there, gold. Nice.
Absolute. So we're going to be talking about the knowledge of London. And so you've decided on this topic. So what sort of line are we going to take with this, Tom? We're going to go right back to the history of where the knowledge actually started.
It might be, I'll tell you what, it might actually be worth just kind of briefly introducing a bit of that because, again, coming back from the history angle, a lot of drivers, don't know the history or... Yeah, so it might be worth covering that if you want to be our maestro of excellence there, sir. I'll give you the history. You can do the
Right.
history.
So in 1851 in London, there was a thing called the Great Exhibition of 1851, basically the first ever World Trade Fair anywhere around the world. And this is where the Crystal Palace comes from, because they built a huge building, a huge glass building that resembled a huge greenhouse in Hyde Park. Apparently, or allegedly, it was the largest structure on the planet at the time when it was built. Obviously, there was 6 million people visited the Great Exhibition in 6 months, so quite a lot of people. Don't forget, there was no motor cars then, no aeroplanes, so they all had to come by train, boat, horse, carriage, or walk there. So there was a huge demand for cabs. Now, you're going back to a time where cab drivers were driving horse-drawn cabs, whether that's a Growler or a Hansom or whatever. I'm not quite sure, before Stanley corrects me, what vehicles were around in that year. But they would have worked their own local rank, and they would have picked people up from where their local rank was and taken them to wherever they wanted to go and returned to their local rank. But of course, there was a huge demand for cabs in Kensington due to the Great Exhibition. So a lot of these cab drivers descended upon Kensington because it was going to be very profitable for them. Now, there was only one problem with this. The vast majority of these cab drivers had never been to Kensington before in their life. So they didn't have a clue where they was going around the area. Now, after the Great Exhibition, there was a lot of complaints that these cab drivers didn't know where they was going. So in 1865, they introduced the knowledge of London, which is what everybody that wants to become a London taxi driver, a black cab driver, has to do to obtain their licence. And what do they have to do, Tom? They have to learn. I mean, when at the moment now you've got a list of 6,000 points, which we'll go on to later. When I did it, you could be asked anywhere in London to anywhere in London. So you had to learn the streets of London. You had to learn the hotels, the apartment buildings, the office buildings, the restaurants, the public houses, museums, parks, theatres, cinemas, hotels. Sorry, I've already said hotels. Schools, colleges, universities, churches, mosques,
synagogues, police stations, public
police
amenities,
stations,
squares.
yeah, squares. Basically, anywhere that somebody might get in a taxi and asked to be taken to within a 6-mile radius of Charing Cross. And when you finish that, you then have to learn all of the basic routes around all of the suburbs as well. They say the amount of information your brain has to consume is equivalent to doing a degree course. But Tom, you've done a degree course. What was harder, the knowledge of London or the degree course?
The knowledge of London, but
Yeah.
maybe my degree was a bit of a Mickey Mouse degree, film and media production.
But a lot of people said that.
Yeah, well, I think really with knowledge, the issue is, or what's difficult about it, is the cadence of it. And this comment that I've said before about it, that some people don't agree with, but is my sentiment, is that I don't think the knowledge of London is actually difficult, as in the process itself is not difficult. It is the cadence and the tenacity that you have to go after it and sustaining that is difficult.
Do you know, I didn't find it difficult at all. I found it time-consuming.
Yes.
And the saying that you live, sleep, eat, and breathe the knowledge is 100% true. Because, whatever else you've got going on in your life at the time goes out the window. It's just basically you are doing knowledge, and that is all you are doing. Relationships break down because someone's doing the knowledge. All sorts of things happen when you're doing the knowledge. And it is true. It takes over your life.
I mean, Mr. Whitehead said it in that Channel 4 documentary. He said, if it's not taken over your life, you're not doing it properly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is, I tell you what, like with that sentiment in mind, I mean, I don't know what I'd be up to now if I wasn't a cab driver. But based upon the sort of life that I'm doing now and what I'm trying to sort of juggle and do, I would not be able to do the knowledge right now at the age I see myself now. I think it'd be a completely different endeavor. So that's the kind of a good kick up the backside if there's anyone listening to this who is sort of young or, their situation's a bit more sort of flexible and easier. And everyone says it, like when you're young and maybe living at home with your parents, or you've not got too many sort of dependabilities in life. It's the best time to go out and do it because, oh yeah, it's just a breeze really. When I think that you can just commit all your life to it. So yeah, off on topic a little bit. I wanted to cover this as a topic on Cab Chat because we talk about, say, the Ford Maxi Cab and all the vehicles come through, which is very important. But fundamentally, the more important bit is the precursor bit, getting people onto the knowledge. And it seems that in years gone by, we've been able to there's always been an organic amount of people coming through. And obviously, Uber's kind of hampered that a little bit because people who might have gone on the knowledge years ago will just go, you know what, I'm going to become a private hire driver. But it only seems to be in recent years, people like Paul Byron, some of the unions have decided, well, actually, we need to look at the input, like the actual people coming into the trade, because this trade doesn't survive without people coming in. So we wanted just to cover a bit about the knowledge, where it is at the moment. So if you are an established driver, put to bed some of the rumors you might have heard about the points, the fact that it's been watered down, arguably, that some people would say, but also how many people are on it currently. So doing a little bit of research, obviously, I think it was last year, wasn't it? 2025 marked 160 years of the knowledge, as you said at the top of the show. It was first introduced in 1865. It said here, it says the average time to complete the knowledge has dropped from 5.25 years in 2020 to about 3 years in 2025.
2020 was a bit of an anomaly because of the pandemic. I think before that, the average time was between 3 to 4 years. And I think the pandemic 2020, 2021, 2022, because of course anybody that was doing the knowledge over that sort of period of lockdowns wouldn't have had an appearance at all. So I think that's a little bit of an anomaly.
Well, my thinking behind this, because some people go, well, it's because like the standards got because as we'll come on to in a minute, they've removed the redlining process and it's now a fixed amount of points of interest. And also because of things like low traffic neighborhoods means that you can't cut through as much as you would have done. But I would argue that because there's less people on the knowledge, how do I sort of best put this? It was always cited as a quite a high dropout rate on the knowledge years ago. It was something about only 20% who apply actually go on to get their badge, so 1 in 5. But I reckon that number or percentage is higher, as in, it could be more like 50% of people that apply end up getting it. I think it's a lot more like, I'm going for it. I know it's difficult. I'm just going to go for it. So I think there's far less dropouts, far less people even try it in the first place. They kind of make the conservative decision at the beginning and they just go for it, I think.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because you've met Will that drives for us for weddings. He came down to Wizan and he wants to start the knowledge. And I spoke to him the other day because he had to disappear because his dad had a fall and he had to take him to hospital. But I said, are you going to do it then? He said, yeah, definitely. He said, but not right at this very moment in time. And I said, oh, why not? He said, I've got so much going on in my life at the moment for the next 2 months that I don't want to start it. Because I said to you, didn't I? He's the sort of person, because of how he is, that he'd want to start it, do it, and concentrate 100% on it and get on with it. So he said, as soon as all this is out of the way, I want to start and get on with it and just do it. And I think he'll be someone that does it very, very quickly, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on your individual style, but I would almost go against that logic because during your time on the knowledge, you're more than likely to have a curveball. If people are getting out in 2 years, but let's just say 3 years as kind of a nice kind of standard because you don't know how the examination process is going to go or, how quickly you get through the beginning parts. 3 years is quite a long time to say, right, my life is going to be exactly the same. It might be. You might not have too many sort of ancillary items in your life or family members that, you might be able to just solely commit your life to it. But if you've got, social lives and family and any other sort of manner of things that could crop up or, a job that you need to sort of hold down and that, these things kind of flow. So it's just best to kind of put in as good a plan as possible, strip away completely everything unnecessary. Like I remember I basically just stopped watching TV when I was on the knowledge, just couldn't have any time for it at all,
So
basically.
is that why you did it so quickly? Because you had no social life and things like that?
Well, arguably, I could have done it quicker. I had no social life, but it still took me nearly 3 years. It was just under 3 years, and that was only because Christmas was coming up. So I think it was a bit like, you know, that phenomenon that you get with marathon
Yeah,
runners,
Christmas.
where
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who get sub 4 times on the marathon, or just under sub 4, and then the next bracket is far wider. But it's probably the same with the knowledge. It's like, well, I want to get this out of the way for Christmas, and they get their head down, and probably more people pass out in that tail end. It'd be interesting to know, actually, how many cab
How many
drivers.
pass out coming up towards Christmas, and it's like the examiner thinks, I'll give them a bit of a Christmas present this year.
Yeah, like November, December. By that logic, there should be more cab drivers out November, December versus January, February.
I wouldn't want to get out that time of year.
What, November, December?
Yeah, I wouldn't, because it's like years ago, Christmas used to be really busy. It's not so busy as it used to be
Yeah.
now. And it used to be really, really busy. So you could get your badge in sort of November, go and work over Christmas and think, this is absolutely great. And, 30 odd years ago, and you come to January and you go, oh, my life, what's happening here? It's like the whole world's collapsing. I've got all this rent to pay on this cab, or I've just bought myself a brand new cab and I've just been out today and I've taken £25.
I don't think that didn't really happen to me with Kipper.
Yeah, because you got out not that long ago.
Well, I tell you why. I mean, obviously, yeah, it might be a bit more of a dramatic change. So I got my badge, I think it was some like mid-December of 2017, and I remember Mr. Whitehead giving us like badge day, and he goes, right, anyone thinking about working the cab tonight? And a few of us put our hands up. I was like, yeah, He's like, wouldn't recommend it, because it was, because of the way the calendar fell, it was like one of the last like Friday nights before Christmas.
Yeah.
And he was like, just don't, because you got to get used to the cab. You got to, the payment system, how you pull up. It's a brand new vehicle. Just don't. And I thought, sod that. I've just done 3 years on the knowledge. I want to go to work tonight. So I got I got my cab. I only did 3 jobs. Got me cab, did me freebie, but it was right. In the first lot of passengers get in, never driven a cab before. They don't shut the door properly. I've got the cab in drive. The door sort of is half locked in this on TX4. It's like half locked in a position that's not open, nor is it closed. Because my foot's on the brake, they can't open it. And it's just all pinging and banging going on. And it was just, that sort of, those kind of little things, that's kind of what he was alluding to. So I did a few jobs and then went home.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I found that, I tell you why the January wasn't too bad. I think because it was still, the whole idea of being a cab driver was so novel and fresh. When you go out,
keen.
there's a lot to learn, like, ranks and how it all works. And I remember at the time, I'm going off a little bit of a tangent now, but whilst it's fresh in my mind, it's just a story that I remember.
Tell us your story.
There used to be the Selfridges rank outside on Oxford Street. It used to be like 2 cabs. Then I think there was a bus stop. Then I don't know if there was an official rank after that, or if it was just like where people kind of overranked after the bus stop. But there was a bit of a gap there. And I remember just going along like Oxford Street westbound, and I'm like, oh, there's one cab there, and there's a space on the back of the rank. And this would have been January time or whatever. Just swung a U-turn on. I'm like, yeah, straight in here. And then I just have someone walk up to my window, tap, tap, tap. Mate, there's loads of us back there. And I'm like, oh. And then, so the rest of like January, February is like looking at all the ranks and where they are, and just like, oh, I'm not going on a rank.
Afraid to pull on a rank just in case there's cabs already waiting there.
Yeah, in case there's a cab's going to drop out of the sky or something, and I pushed in front of him, Yeah. That was a good one. Where was we on this knowledge? So, we spoke about
the amount of people that have actually signed up for the knowledge in 2025 has made it that there's more people on the knowledge. Well, not so much more people on the knowledge now, but it's the highest rate of people signing up for a decade.
Yes, which is news to me, because 2022 applications were at 440. Now, obviously, a lot of it's because of the pandemic. I heard something that TfL weren't really managing their inbox at the time, similar to our license renewals that were email only. I think a lot of people wanted to apply but didn't get through it. But whether that happened anyway, that's kind of a legend has it story. End of November 2025 saw a 68.6% increase, and the full calendar year of 2025 was around 1,300 people applying. And it says that's on track to be the highest annual intake in 10 years. Because
now, if we could, have a minimum of half of them actually obtaining their badges at the end of the knowledge, that would, to some extent, slow down the decline in the trade. It's not going to completely get rid of the decline, because we're losing around 1,000 drivers a year. And if, it means we'd only be losing 500 drivers a year. Really, we want to get back to a level where, it's a bit worrying, and a lot of drivers are going to say, oh, we don't want loads of people doing the knowledge because there's been loads more cab drivers out here and it's bad enough at the moment, and we won't earn a living. No, we want to get back to a sustainable number. There's like 14,000, or is it 15,800 or 900 taxi drivers left in London at the moment. We want to maintain it around that sort of number so that we don't decline to a point where we're not a viable option, but also we don't grow to a point where we can't earn a living anymore. We need to maintain the numbers. And this is what a lot of cab drivers don't get, is that we need to maintain the numbers to still be a viable option for the general public and also for the train stations and things like that.
Yeah, that's it. There's kind of like black spots to the service, really. And that's arguably where, the likes of Ubers and that have been able to creep in. It's just that where there's been like a slight weakness of where we cover, take like, I know a lot of us will go through, say, East London, like a lot of Essex drivers on the way in to start your shift. And maybe it's not as fruitful as what it once was. But you think about that whole nightlife area of the zombie triangle, which I love that term, the zombie triangle.
Shoreditch, Hackney.
You can work that out. Everyone else, I think, why it's the triangle. Yeah, that whole area there, like who goes and works there now? I know there's less kind of nightlife activity there. Often it's because you drop off in that area, you're there and you pick up, but there's this kind of areas where cab drivers used to go and hunt for work that we now don't, that then falls away, and then passengers know, well, I'm not going to be able to get a cab here. So it does take a bit of time for that confidence to sort of pick up and go, oh, well, I know I'll be able to get a cab if I stand here, or I know there'll be a cab coming along soon. It is kind of like a horse before the cart problem, really, isn't it? So
it's like there used to be, years ago, there used to be a very busy taxi rank at Camberwell Green.
Wouldn't have known that, yeah. But I guess that's quite good, because it is quite a good converging point of some of those areas, into Peckham, or those who want to go, further south, into Dulwich or whatever.
I don't think the taxi rank is even there anymore. And yet, when I got my licence, Comcab were using it as a calling rank for work. But before that, you spoke to drivers and, oh, yeah, I just used to work the Camberwell rank because it was really, really busy. And that was it. They didn't go anywhere else. Right, so sorry for the interruption there, but Tom had to change cameras because what's your audio coming through at the moment? Is it coming through? Oh, it's coming through your microphone.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so we're back there. Yeah, so just reliability of cabs, cabs being available. That's the main thing, really.
The problem is, if we drop to a number where we cannot sustain the taxi ranks at the train stations, then the train stations or the rail companies may introduce something else, i.e., like they do in other areas, like Gatwick Airport isn't taxis, they're private hire vehicles. Stansted Airport isn't taxis, they're private hire vehicles. So it could be that they introduce something else rather than using taxis.
Well, we're already close to it when you think about, King's Cross. You see what's opposite you there. They clearly know that's going on.
Option.
That's an option. Other things. So, yeah, coming back to that the numbers there, we've got about 1,300 people applied. Now, currently, it says here, as of November 2025, there were 1,390 candidates actively on the knowledge. But obviously, it needs a few years, because what happens is you get people who are in the system for like 2, 3, 4 years on the knowledge before you get back up to the point of sort of thousands of numbers, because like as you said, the numbers of drivers will still fall. Because as of
Not as quickly.
yes,
It won't be as such a sharp decline as it is at the moment, which would be a good thing, to be honest. We can't sustain the number of drivers we're losing, because if we carried on the way we was going by losing 1,000 drivers a year, within 15 years there wouldn't be a cab trade. There'd be no drivers left.
yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at here. Yeah, like that's what I've said and people have said online. There, 2045. If you go by
Yeah.
that current
But
sort of
if you're gaining 500 drivers a year but losing 1,000, in 15 years there will still be 7,500 drivers left.
yes,
Now, if we can get that up to 800 getting their badges a year, that'd be a great thing, because then you'd have a substantially more. Because don't ask me to do the maths, because it ain't going to work this time in the morning. But you'd have substantially more people that would be left in 15 years' time. And that's the level where we want to get to, not where we're increasing to the point where there was 25,500 drivers and and everyone was struggling.
and look, there was a natural cap on that as well, because that's why they brought in redlining and things like that, because there was a lot of people that thought they might be able to get lucky on the knowledge if they just applied and just turned up almost and just got in the system. But then there's natural ways of restricting that. So whilst I've mentioned the red line there, there's obviously a couple of things that have come in recent years to make the system a bit more
Fairer and
yeah, a bit more democratic, really. So it's basically the bureaucracy of it that's been trimmed, because candidates will say it's still as difficult as ever. We know a few knowledge boys that are still getting D's, so it's still difficult enough, and as well as things like the red line system has changed. So you can't get redlined, i.e. you can't be sent back to a preceding stage, but you can just get stuck on the stage that you're on, sort of in loop. So the scoring system still works, that you have to, get 4 C's or above to be able to get onto the next stage. But if you don't achieve that, then that resets back to 0 again. So you can still be on a stage for quite a long time, basically, especially if you say 56.
Same as redlining, but just
Well, redline was just brutal, because it's just to go back a stage.
Yeah.
You've already proved yourself at one point, so why go back? It's a bizarre thing. Redlining's gone. The other one as well is there's the fixed amount of points. There's 6,000 points.
Well, we had this conversation with someone on our fish and chip club meet the other night, where he said, I'm glad it's 6,000 points, because, how are you supposed to ever know everything in London? And I said, well, 35 years ago, you could be asked anything in London. And when a passenger gets into the taxi, they're not going to go, if they say, can you take me to so-and-so? And you go, I don't know that because it's not on my 6,000 points list. You can't say that. You've got to be able to take them or be able to converse with them to a point where you say, I'm really sorry, I don't know that. Can you tell me a road that it's off of? And then you get a general idea of where it is. But yeah, passengers can get in and ask you to take them to the most obscure places that no cab driver on earth has ever heard of.
Yep.
But so yeah, it's a good thing in one respect and not in another.
Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment too. I like the fact that there was the ambiguity of what the examiner could ask you, because it was about holding your nerve in the appearance, and then eventually it would come down to a point that you might know, if they just kept sort of probing along with their line of inquiry. But then on the other side, it does move to a quality approach rather than quantity. To give you an example, I finished the knowledge of about 7,000 points of interest, because I had a flashcard app where I could store them. But that was cobbled together from stuff I'd seen on the sheets and stuff I'd gone out and just found. I was just quite diligent in, if I was picking up another point, I would look at the doors down the road,
See if there's anything else in the
or
area.
even if I was watching something on TV and it'd be the most randomest thing, and that did come to my advantage a couple of times. It did happen in appearance, just a random like film and editing studio. But the issue is, I mean, in recent years before the 6,000 points came out, a lot of students were just working from the sheets. They were just working, so they weren't really going out and finding new stuff. But also of those 7,000 points I learned, 1,000 of them could have just been an absolute crap because they would have never been asked, or just something so random that no examiner's ever going to ask for. So at least this is a list that they've kind of said, right, this is the quality list, really.
It's quite funny because when I got my license, an old cab driver said to me, "Oh, you just..." I can't remember where I was, but I think I was on a rank somewhere, and he seen me badge. It's all nice and shiny and that. "Oh, you just got your badge?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "So you know all the clinics along Harley Street, do you?" I went, "Yeah." He went, "Now forget all them and learn which way the door numbers run." He said, "Because they never ask for the clinic name, they just ask you to take them to a door number in Harley Street." He said, "And if you can know roughly where each street, which way the door numbers run and on which sides," he said, "you've cracked it." He said, "That's it." He said, "Now learn to be a cab driver." Not a
Yeah,
boy.
I would argue, like, knowing the locations of sort of like Tesco Expresses.
Yeah, it's more important than the clinics along Harley Street.
Yeah, well, not so Harley should be like this sort of points list or whatever, or like pubs or whatever, because people use pubs as a point of reference.
Yeah.
It's just after the Shakespeare or whatever, or it's just after Tesco's Express or whatever. And I know that's quite hard to test because there's so many different Tesco Expresses, but then you do find that once you then become a cab driver, is that you're looking. That's the sort of way markers, because especially when people live in certain areas of London, like if they live around the Belsize Park area, that is so ingrained in them. They know that inside out, and they expect you to know that inside out. I think it was Mr. Harvey said to me when I was on the knowledge. He said that the knowledge is like you've got to imagine the knowledge is basically someone who's got off a bus in their local area. Now you've got to know that area all around the bus stop. You've got to know that for basically everywhere in London.
Exactly. And it's it's the same with any sort of point that someone might ask you, because it's okay just knowing the 6,000 points, and it does give it a quality sort of element to it. But the old way of doing it did have a natural cycle, because an examiner they used to go out on their bikes. The examiners, they used to be given like time away from examining to go out on their bikes and find new points. And you'd find that the same examiner would ask the same point over and over again, because it catch so many knowledge boys and girls out. They'd keep asking it until it got to the point where it was on all the point sheets. Everybody knew where it was, and people would start going and sitting in front of him and going, he'd ask it, like the one I said the other night, "Jacob's Well Mews, where's Jacob's Well Mews?" And like, they'd start saying, "Oh, right, yes, Jacob's Well Mews is George Street, and going to wherever, Marylebone Station, Malcolm Place." And once they started knowing where it was, it moved on to the next, sort of obscure point. So it did have a sort of natural cycle. And some may argue that it made you go out and learn points more than if you just had a list of them that they was confined to.
Yeah, I think there was a curiosity to it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it gets you thinking, like, what is a point? Where could someone go? Okay, they might not want to go to this location, but is there something around the corner that is as good? I mean, what one I learned, I can't remember the bloody name of it now. Was it Beckford Close off Warwick Road? I can't remember what the name of the house is there. Warren House. That just seemed like a real random, nondescript point when I was on the knowledge, but the amount of Middle Eastern customers that go there is just unreal, really.
Never been there.
You don't work the streets, though.
I've never
less now, though. I haven't been there for a while, but maybe because I'm not working it as regularly. But I'm going through. I've got the 6,000 point list up in front of me, and they update it like every, I think, quarterly.
But the thing is, you've already got knowledge candidates that are complaining that examiners are asking points that are not on the list as well.
Yeah, which they're not supposed to, because even for reference for anyone who's, like, say, cab drivers who want to know how this works, is that they can only ask things that are on that list from that 6,000 points.
The list can change.
It can change. and they do provide updates, and they tell you which ones have changed in the updates. It doesn't tell you what the street name is. Like, you used to have to go out and figure that bit out for yourself. It just gives you the point, and you have to work out how does it sit, how do you leave it and stuff. So it's not a case of just learning these off by heart. You still have to go out and do them. But if there's a run, let's say random run, Blue Book 120, I don't know what run it is. If there's a street included in that run as part of the Blue Book, but that street is not in the 6,000 points list, because this points list covers actual points and streets, they are not allowed to ask that street. It must be within this. But coming back to my point about how the knowledge is, I think, is about understanding kind of more local area, like especially when you get a little bit out of central, is more understand the local areas, like where is the hub, where is the pub, where is the petrol station. They kind of serve as more as landmarks.
Yeah.
Points list kind of does do that. Like, I'm looking at N10 Muswell Hill.
What run was it you mentioned? You said
I just said 120.
Run 120.
Is that your old Blue Book though? Not. Yeah, that's different from the ones that's current, isn't it? Yeah.
Isn't blue, obviously.
It's for pink. Those on video, Jamie's holding up the original pink Blue Book.
And there's they're in lists of 18 runs on a page, and there are 28 lists of 18 on a page. I'll let you work it out. 468 runs.
There we go. Where was I on that?
You forgot what you were saying there.
No. So we're basically saying that so this Muswell Hill list of points, right? There's about 20 points in Muswell Hill, yeah? But all the points it gives are kind of, I guess, big ones rather than... Yeah, right. Like years ago, like Mr. Wilkins would ask you like a really small point in Muswell Hill, which there's not really any basis to learn that far up. Whereas this has got Toffs of Muswell Hill, Shell Petrol Station, Muswell Hill Synagogue, the Everyman Cinema, the Laboratory Spa and Health Club, the Miller and Carter, because the library, because these are all kind of big things that people are going to be using as... I live just off of, just turn left at the library, or, turn left after the...
I mean, some points sort of maintain to be points throughout history, because, I mean, the cinema used to come out when I was doing the knowledge. But, Miller and Carter wouldn't have, because Miller and Carter wasn't around 35 years ago.
No, but it would have been the church or whatever's there.
Yeah, it would have been the church or something like that, yeah. The library used to come out occasionally, and places like that. One thing that would never, ever be a point, the Shell petrol station.
Right, okay.
Never, ever have asked that. Never in a million years. Because they was insignificant. They was everywhere. There was petrol stations everywhere back then. Nowadays, there's far fewer. So, you may get a lot of customers ask you to take them to the closest petrol station, because they've also got shops in them as well. And a lot of people go in and pick up a pint of milk on the way home from a petrol station.
Well, this one's quite iconic because it's on the way out, like Colney Hatch Lane. And up that way. Yeah. And so you can see that's why they've sort of done the points in this way, which I would argue is better, because I probably wouldn't have had, like, this is like 20 good points that give you an idea of Muswell Hill, like as a geographical area. Whereas when I would have pointed it, I probably would have just pointed like a few pubs, Toffs or whatever, and it doesn't give you like a kind of insight to how a local would see that area. So there is definitely a quality element to these 6,000 points. And then also you got some people who said, well, the knowledge isn't... Is the knowledge points, or is the knowledge how you drive between the points?
Both.
So this then it kind of removes the element of your appearance being removed, because the examiner just wants to just throw random points at you just for the sake of throwing random points at you. But yeah, these are online for people to go and have a little look. Egg Nightclub. I'm just looking at random points here, just saying them out loud, just see if it just does anything to people. The Boogaloo. These are all North points, But yeah.
So, the number of people doing the knowledge has increased, which is a good thing. Who do we attribute that to? I mean, you've got Andy Scott, London Taxi PR,
Mhm.
that's doing a fantastic job going around doing job fairs, especially at Millwall Football Club, and other places, and trying to promote the knowledge. You've got the LTDA that are doing their bit as well. And also you've got our friend Mr.
I
Byron
was gonna
that's,
say you had to mention him, otherwise he would get really upset.
he'd get really, really upset if you didn't mention him. You know, poor precious Paul.
But Paul,
Uh,
I mean, we've mentioned it on a podcast previously, but it's quite obvious to that trade that he sort of works himself in. Like, he's a proprietor. Yeah. Therefore, where does his customers come from? The knowledge.
the knowledge.
But
Yeah.
so many other proprietors haven't really seen that. At most, you had, I don't know the exact sort of history of where it all used to be, but when Knowledge Point Knowledge Point was always like in proximity to like Brewery Road, and then it moved to inside of Brewery Road. So at most, you could be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go through the knowledge, and then I'll go to Brewery Road to buy my cab because I've been around them all the time. But it just seems bizarre that so many proprietors don't really see that
The value.
connection.
See, the funny thing is, when I was younger, a proprietor was very reluctant to take on someone that had just got their
True. Yeah, I guess
especially
so.
the smaller ones. You go to some of the smaller ones and they go, yeah, go and rent off of Colts or BJ's or somewhere for 6 months, and then if you haven't had an accident in 6 months, come back and talk to me then.
Yeah, I
But
guess there wasn't really a
you-
need if there was already kind of a good sort of flow of
yeah,
drivers out and about. Because
but they was reluctant to take on freshly sort of qualified taxi drivers as such because of the problem with accidents and insurance. And I think some of the insurance policies used to say you needed to have been driving a taxi for 6 months before they would insure you as well.
wow, yeah.
Things like that. But
Well, it makes perfect sense though, doesn't it? Like if every proprietor had a knowledge school within it, I know obviously not a lot of them have sort of maybe the space, the whereabouts to do it, but Paul did this quite well with Wizan. He teamed up with Wizan when Dean sort of scaled down his operations during the pandemic, and then it was a natural link. It was then like, okay, so yeah, I've been seeing Paul down at the school, or whatever. Then yeah, I'm going to go rent from Paul, and credit to it. That's how it should be done, really. Um, so yeah, we've gone off on a little bit there. I've just obviously pushed that over a bit, but be interested to know how many of you are listening to this are knowledge students, because that helps us inform some of the topics that we talk about. I know it's nice to understand what's going on in the cab trade, but also it's nice for us to understand what's going on at the before part, because
so being a taxi driver, let me ask you a question. If someone come to you and said, is it worth me doing the knowledge now or not? What would your answer be?
I still get that message quite a bit, to be fair, that pops into my Instagram. People say, I watch the videos and like, is it still good? My granddad used to be. I never actually answer it for anyone. Like if they, well, but people say,
you give them the political answer, do you?
no, I don't even really. Sometimes I don't give them. If someone comes up to me specifically in the street and says, "What do you think?" or whatever, I do honestly let them know it's not going to be. It's going to change your life, but it's not going to like be winning the lottery or whatever. You know what I mean? You still got to go to work. You still got to go graft. But sometimes some people like, I feel like delay. They ask the question, but just more as a way of kind of delay themselves from actually doing it.
Yeah.
Like they ask, is it still worth it? But it's like my granddad used to, is it still worth it? Let me ask you. It's a bit like when one of your colleagues or like one of your mates phones you up and says, Jamie, is it busy on the streets today? You're like, go find out for yourself.
I mean, the sort of answer I normally give people nowadays is, I'll say to them, if you're going to do it, it's worth doing. But if you're thinking it's going to be a job for life, there's no guarantee to any industry these days that it's a job for life, because the world's changing at such an alarming rate that nothing's guaranteed in this life anymore. So don't think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do the knowledge and that's it. I'm going to be driving a taxi until the day I retire, because that may not be the case. But for the moment, it's still a decent living. And it's enjoyable. You get to learn about London and things like that. So it also depends on the person as well. Some people have got very high expectations and some people haven't. And it depends on who the person is as to the way I answer it as well. But I still think I enjoy driving. I enjoy driving the taxi, even after 35 years of getting my license 35 years ago. I still enjoy driving a taxi. So for me, would I do it now if I had the choice, probably not at my age. I'd probably do something else. But if I was the age I was when I started doing the knowledge, when I was 22, now, would I do it? Probably, yeah. I probably would.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I went on a I got a sort of caveat myself there because I just went on a bit of a wider ramble about when people ask. I was alluding to something else whereby people are like, they want you to definitively say it's like amazing,
It's
like
amazing, yeah.
before I sort of commit to it. And I think
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say here is that if you want to go and do it, need to be compelled to go and do it. Like, don't listen to someone else and say, "Oh, it's amazing" or whatever. Like, it's got to work for your circumstances. For me, it's done everything I wanted it to achieve. Uh, Therefore, it's perfect for me in that I wanted to control my earnings so I could buy a property by myself, which I've done. I wanted to have freedom over my time so I can go on holiday when I want, which I was able to do. And also work for myself, self-employed. So I would argue being self-employed or having that way of thinking about yourself is far safer than being in a job. And the world is different now in that people do transition out of careers a lot, or you stay at a certain company for 3-4 years, build skills,
and
go somewhere
go
else,
somewhere else.
and you constantly have to do that. So I agree with your sentiment that this might not necessarily be a job for life, but what you then build by going through the knowledge, then also being self-employed, it gives you something to fall back upon, and that allows you to go do other stuff. You know, like you yourself, you do the wedding driving, you do the tour guiding, and then if after all those things, you can go sit at the airport,
Yeah,
which I know
like the
obviously
streets,
work the streets exactly. So it just gets your brain a bit more.
do
I feel like,
podcasts,
sorry.
do podcasts.
Yeah, well, I feel like whenever I was like employed, you're always at the mercy of like, oh, my job, or I've got to get a
Yeah.
job or something, and you don't really approach the system kind of
No.
creatively. Whereas I
I
think
think
now, if ever it's over quiet on the streets or I'm out of work, and some cab drivers don't like the idea of this because it's the idea that once you're a cab driver, you must always just be a cab driver.
yeah.
But
What's the matter with you? Why don't you just drive a taxi?
you can look at the problem and go, you know what? It's not so good if I go to work in the mornings. Maybe I'll go to work in the evenings. And that's probably the only bad side to it is that yes, there's some of the more profitable hours are the weekends and the evenings and
Antisocial
stuff.
hours.
Anti-show social hours.
You can't come into this job thinking that you are going to work 9 to 5 and earn a living, because that's probably the most quietest 7-hour period in driving a taxi. You've got to get one of the rush hours one way or the other, and you've got to do antisocial hours. That's the downside of this job. The upside is, even if you're not creative, it gives you the option to do other things. Whereas if you're working for someone 5 days a week, 6 days a week or whatever, which a lot of employers expect you to do Saturday mornings now and things like that, you're not got a lot of time left to do anything else. And, even if you was a creative type of person, you wouldn't have the time or the energy to actually put anything into place, because all you've got left is Saturday afternoons and Sundays are normally spent with the family. So it sort of thwarts any sort of creative ideas you might have. Whereas driving a taxi, even if you just want to go fishing, go fishing. If you've got a day where you think, oh, there's a tube strike on tomorrow, I can't cope with the traffic, so I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going fishing. You've got that choice. Whereas if you're employed, you've still got to struggling to work, even though there's a tube strike. Or if you're allowed to work from home, you can be one of those.
Just look at the calendar, like, cool, this is a profitable time of year or whatever. I'm going to work then, or school holidays. You know what? I'm not going to work then because it's going to get a bit slower there. You've got that historical data. One other sentiment I want to kind of leave us on
Go for it.
is it's the kind of job, or I've found that the more you want from it, the more you want to get out of it, or the higher expectation you have on, I'm going to go out and earn this or whatever, the worse the job becomes. The second you need it, the
Yeah.
second you think, oh, well, I've got an insurance bill or something coming up, I'm just going to go out and go and earn it, or, you might be behind on your tax bill or something, it's just game over in terms of how enjoyable this job is. It's the old golden handcuffs, isn't it? And everyone says this, that, it's the only job where you start at the top and you end up at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, I think we started off at the top of the show, and we've now got to the bottom. We're going to say goodbye to you, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on the knowledge. And if you're, especially if you're a cab driver as well, whether you feel that we need to maintain numbers, or do we need to keep losing drivers, because there are those elements within the trade that feel that the fewer drivers, the more we're all going to earn. And that doesn't necessarily work. It doesn't necessarily apply that if there's fewer of us, we're going to earn more money. It could be that if there's fewer of us, we're going to actually earn less money. So be interested to hear your thoughts. Knowledge, boys and girls. We'd love to have you along on the podcast. And if any of you want to come on, you'd feel more than welcome. And we must get Ben on. We must get Ben on.
Let us know how you're getting on. Is it easy? Is it difficult?
Yeah.
What do these changes mean for you? Because it's quite easy for us to be armchair critics. And everyone likes to, it doesn't matter what endeavor you do, whether it's, I don't know, a marathon or a real fast cycle ride. Everyone likes to believe that their time was the hardest. But there's no time that's is harder than now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've been Jamie the cabbie. You've been listening to Cab Chat, and he's been
Tom the taxi driver. We'll see you again on the next one.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, because the vast majority of you that are watching are not actually subscribed. So subscribe. You've only got to hit the button down below. It don't cost you anything. That's the silly thing, People think, when you say I've subscribed, they think, I've got to pay money. No, don't cost you a penny. Subscribe, help us out, and we'll really appreciate it. See you on the next one. Be lucky.